Hey friends, it's me, the Ebony Otaku, and her dog. Say hi, Sammy. He's going to sleep. We just had our walk. At this time of year, we do not walk in the middle of the day because it's too hot. I'm a responsible dog owner, and we go when the sun goes down. But I drank a Mountain Dew at 11 p.m., and I must do something with this energy. So why not read Warhammer? For those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. Memberships are open in my member videos. I'm going to try to get 2 to 4 videos out per month. Those are just all communication videos, things like making friends, valuing your unique self, navigating relationships in a nerdy life, stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. I'm thinking of a cool way to call out members. It's going to be like the most edited thing I've ever done. So look forward to that. But I want to do something really cool and really themed to the channel for people who join memberships. But let's not delay. We're here to read some Warhammer. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And we're going to get into Eisenhorn. Once in a while, shall take a sip of her Amosec. What? It's midnight on a Saturday. What are you doing? All right, friends. This is what we call a cold reading, meaning I didn't rehearse this. And Warhammer be having words. You know what? Now that I think about it, we're gonna switch to the up close glasses. Change. Oh, that's way better. Yeah, I can read way better in these. These go back on the wall. Yes, I have hooks on the wall for all my glasses. All right, shall we? Yes, we shall. Reading from Eisenhorn by Dan Abnett. Reading voice. We're starting in chapter 25, Xenos Necrotuch. End game. The Blank-Eyed Man. For those of you who have never read Eisenhorn, I'm starting at the point of his omnibus where he is facing Gorgon Lock, and all you need to know is that for Eisenhorn, one of the most legendary inquisitors amongst the Emperor's inquisitorial ranks, he's basically his Moriarty, like his greatest one that he's trying to get after. So, yep, that's where we're at. Demons, books, it's a good time. All right. We left the firefight behind us and plunged through the Tetra Gate. Baquin, Midas, and I racing as fast as we could through the disorienting spirals and imbricating segments of the dying Saruthi edifice. As we ran, I reported the situation to Fleet Command, but had no reply or way of knowing if they'd understood me. Then I tried Titus Endor, but the Vox was dead. Moving at speed, the place became even more of a four-dimensional maze, but I had my mind now an end game I had taken from the dazzle. The memory trace of the route to the Xenos Necrotuch he had ripped from the block. By my estimation, and it could hardly be trusted, we were approaching the heart of the edifice. Perhaps not the physical or geographic heart, but the part of the dimensional construct buried most deeply in the interlocking lamina of the warp space and time. There were more Saruthi here, skittering and clicking around on their silver-limbed braces without purpose or response. The smell of licorice filled the warm, glowing tunnels and tiled chambers. We heard screaming ahead of us and the thump of gunfire. Titus! Titus, it's Eisenhorn. Do you read? The Vox coughed to life. Gregor, for the love of the Emperor, I need... It broke again. More shots. We hurried through the Tetra Gate and almost at once had to dive for cover as last fire flurried around us. The chamber we had entered was by no mean the largest we had found in the place, but it was singular. Dark and gloomy. It lacked the radiance that shone from the walls and the floors elsewhere. The lustrous material that composed the rest of the edifice was here gray and dissected, as if dead. Another block, like the one Haldane had been propped up against, but many times the size, rose from the ashy floor, streaked with oily greenish matter that ran down its flanks. It pooled at the base. An asymmetrical shelf jutted from it, just above the height of an average human, and the blue octahedron set upon it, glowing internally. The Xenos Necrotuch. Dazo's engram immediately confirmed it. The chamber stank with its evil. The licorice smell so rich and cloying it made us gag. Behind and above the main pillar, warped sculptures of metal, bone, and other organic materials grew from the walls and curving roof. Vicious hooks of filthy chains dangled from these outgrowths. This was not Saruthi handiwork, but a touch of pure chaos, spawned by the Necrotuch, infecting the Xenos fabric of its sanctum. Smaller pillars, irregular and unmatched, dotted the floor around the main block. In between them, a gunfight was raging. The three of us ran from the exposure of it and lit into the Tetragate and found shelter behind the nearest of the smaller blocks. Last shots were in and out of stone shapes, ricocheting and rebounding. Titus! Gurgle! He was about 20 meters away, a third of the way into the chamber, huddled behind a block and firing his last pistol at figures closer to the Necrotuch's resting place. I glimpsed Locke and 8 or 9 heretic troopers. I looked at either side of me, Baquin and Midas. Choose your targets, I told them. We began to fire in support of Endor, dropping at least one of the heretics. As they reeled from the salvo, Endor leapt up and ran forward. A last shot clipped him and blew him back up against the stone upright. I ran forward myself, firing my bolt pistol, which I had braced in both hands. I blew chunks from the blocks ahead of me and hit at least one of the enemy gunners. I reached Endor. He was wounded in the chest. It would be fatal if we couldn't get him clear quickly. I pulled him to cover and waited while Baquin ran up through the rows by my side. Pressure here, I said, showing her, my hands wet with my old friend's blood. She did as she was told. I became aware of the thunderous noises from beyond the chamber. The place shook. More thunder rolled, and a section of the curved ceiling suddenly splintered and collapsed, cascading wreckage down, allowing the cold exterior light in the shaft. A second later, 3 more holes ruptured and burst through the roof from the outside. I could hear the muffled hammering of the bombardment. Midas! He was already moving up to my left, ditching his needle rifle for the pistols in the tight confines. Lethal Glavian needles hissed through the air. The ground continued to shake. A further section of the roof came down. Leaving Endor with Banquin, I ducked from the pillar to pillar, braving the deluge of shots. Midas and I switched to our earpiece, Lynx and Glossia. Thorn, Usher's Aegis, a Tempest Sinister. Aegis attending, Tempest in 3. I counted the 3 beats and ran forward as Midas hurled his frag grenade to my left before opening fire with bolt pistols. The flash and bang of the blasts obscured the bombardment outside for a moment. A heretic was flung upwards, limbs flailing, and glanced brokenly off a pillar before hitting the ground. Midas's tempest of covering confusion had allowed me to get within 10 meters of Locke. I could no longer see him. However, keeping my grip on my pistol, I drew my power sword in my left hand and came around the block. Locke and one of his men had chosen the exact same moment to plow forward into me. We broke from cover and came face to face in a narrow gap between pillars. My pistol first shot missed, then lunging at Locke and tore the left arm off his accomplice. Before the wailing man had even hit the ground, Locke's lap pistol had put a round through the meat of my right arm. A long-bladed dagger flashed forward in the other hand. We slammed into each other. I tried to sweep my power sword around, but it struck something, and Locke sidestepped it. The basket hilt of his dagger smashed into my face and knocked me over onto my back. With a grin that he knew I could never copy, he raised his lap pistol to fire down into my brain. 2 tons of Xenos quarried stone pillar sliced through the hip height, crushed him into the flaking ground. I rose. It's a good time for a sip. I rose. Gorgon Locke was still alive. His belly and pelvis were smashed into the fallen pillar, and his arms were pinned. He gazed up at me through blinking, bewildered eyes. Gorgon Locke, in the eyes of the Holy Inquisition, you are thrice damned by action, association, and belief, I said, beginning the catechism of abolition. No, he whispered. As I completed the exclamation, I cut the mark of heresy into the flesh of his brow with the tip of my sword. By the time I had finished, he was dead from his crush injuries. The shattering chamber still shook. On their long chains, the hooks swung. Dust and fragments dribbled down from the tears in the roof, falling through the bars of cold light. I reached down and found the pearl polyhedron in Locke's blood-soaked coat. And the primer. I slipped it into my pocket and turned to see Midas approaching. The last of his rats have fled, he said, holstering his pistols. He looked down at the dead shipmaster. So, perish all the heretics, eh? I reached up with one hand to take the Xenos Necrotouch from its shelf, and I found myself unable to move. Some enormous psychic force froze me rigid. So, perish all the heretics indeed, said the voice. Turn him so he can see me. Involuntarily, I swung around, my hand still raised in the act of reaching out. I saw Midas, also paralyzed and rigid, his dark features locked in a ridiculous rictus of dismay. Conrad Molitor, my brother Inquisitor, was standing before me, smiling. His 3 hooded servants were by his sides. Such valor, Grigor. Such dedication. I thought you'd be the one to find the prize. I tried to answer, but my mouth refused to obey me. Spittle bubbled between my clenched teeth. Molitor looked around at his cowled companions. Let him speak, he said. The psychic constraints on my voice slackened. Speech was still an effort. What are you doing, Molitor? Recovering the priceless Necrotouch, of course. We really can't have you destroying another copy now, can we? We? There are many who believe mankind will benefit from more study of this artifact than from its destruction. I have come to safeguard those interests. Rorken will never allow. You will burn. My estimable Lord Brother Rorken will never know. Feel how this place quakes. See how the roof splinters and collapses. 10 minutes ago, I signaled the fleet that the primary objective was achieved. I gave the code for Sanction Extremis. They believed the Necrotouch had been found and safely disposed of. Our forces are withdrawing with all haste. The batteries of the fleet have begun to level these Xenos places. No one will know that the divine Necrotouch has been carried off safely. Not a shred of evidence will survive the bombardment. Not a shred of evidence. Nor any voice of dissent. His yellow-pupiled eyes regarded me. How brave of you to give your life in the assault on 56 Izar. Your name will be remembered on the roll of honor. I assure you, I'll see to that myself. Bastard! I fought with my mind to break free, but it was impossible. This was not Molitor's hold on me. One of his retainers, or all three in concert, supremely powerful. Fetch it for me, Molitor said to one of his men, gesturing to the Necrotouch with a wave of his checked sleeve. We would be well to leave promptly. The hammering bombardment was now perpetual shaking roar. The robed figure slid forward and took down the blue octahedron, cupping it in elegant, long-nailed fingers. He seemed to study it, and looked round at Molitor. It is useless. What? Unreadable. Locked within an impenetrable Xenos language code. Molitor stammered. No! Impossible! Break the code! Would that I could. It is beyond my ability. There must be means of translation. The hooded man holding the Necrotouch looked round at me. He has the primer. The only primer. He's trying not to think about it, but I can see it in his mind. Look in his coat pocket. The smile returned to Molitor's face. He came close to me, reaching out a hand towards my coat. Devious to the last, Grigor. You whoreson wretch. A last round blew his hand off at the wrist. Molitor screamed and stumbled back, clutching his smoking stump. Baquin, her face pursed grimly, her last carbine at her shoulder and aimed at his heart, appeared beside me. Kill them! Kill them! Molitor screamed. I felt the immediate pressure of the psychic vice tightening to finish me. Then I reeled away, freed. The psychic blank of Baquin's untouchable nature shielded me now that she was at my side. The servant holding the Necrotouch took a step backwards in surprise. Molitor, frantic with pain and anger, saw that his powerful psychic was thwarted somehow and yelled, Albara! Tharth! Code words. Trigger words. The pair of servants who had remained by his side sprang forward, their robes shredding away. Acroflagellants. Heretics reprogrammed and rebuilt with augmentics and bionics to serve as murderous slaves. The trigger words woke them from their calming states of bliss and plunged them into maniacal rages. Out of their robes, they were foul, hunched things, encrusted with crude surgical implants and sacred charms. Their hands were lashing clutches of electro-whips, their eyes dull and bulbous orbits under the rims of tarnished pacifier helmets, bolted into their skulls. Midas, Baquin, and I fired up our weapons together, raking them with punishment as they charged forward. The damage they suffered was immense, but still they came on. Their bodies pumped with intoxicating adrenal fluid, pain blockers, and frenzy-inducing chemical stimulants. They didn't feel what we were doing to them. One was just an arm's length from me when my desperate rain of bolts finally defeated it. A shot exploded in the armored matrix of chemical dispensers on its shoulder, spraying fluid into the air. In a second, it fell, convulsing, on the ground at our feet as the damage robbed it of its divine source and left nothing but agony behind. The other barely felt the punctures of Midas's two subtle needles. Frantically, we split up to either side out of its path, braying and thrashing its whip limbs. It pounded after Midas, who ducked left and right between the pillars, trying to evade it. Only his Glavian-bred grace and speed kept him out of the inexorably advancing grip. He knew he had seconds left. Bakewin and I were moving, but there was precious little we could do. Midas pulled off his pouch of grenades, priming one as he twisted it and sidestepped between the pillars, scarcely avoiding the withering lash of flexible metal whips and gouges. Midas feinted, left, and then he threw himself directly at the beast, snagging the strap of his pouch around its neck as he vaulted over its shoulder headfirst. The grenades detonated in a stunning flash and atomized the raving mad beast. Caught in the shockwave, Midas was thrown into a pillar and dropped unconscious. Eisenhorn! Eisenhorn! Molitor was wailing as he and his remaining servant hunted for me. His voice was cracking with pain and fury. Stay at my side, I told Bakewin as we ran deeper into the chamber. That psychic can't touch me while I'm close to you. Half the ceiling, a significant part of the wall, blew in. For a second, the air was solid with billowing orange fire. Defended, our skins scorched by the blast. Bakewin and I were back on our feet in a moment. The chamber was open to the sky now, and the cold white light poured in, heavy with smoke. Come on. Together, we scrambled toward the blast-damaged wall, picking our way up the smoldering slope of broken and whatever material the Ceruthi used for construction. This material was fused and bubbling with plastic or flesh. We headed for the light. Good time to take a sip. It's Amasec. We emerged high on the curving upper face of the Ceruthi edifice. It was cold, and the wind that came across the segmented ridges of the polished white roof was brisk and full of odorous smoke, thylacine and promethium. We were at a dizzying height. The pearly flanks and vast structure arched away to the ground far below, and the surface was a hard polish like ice. Bakewin slipped, and I managed to grab her before she slid away down the curve. From up here, high in the alien sky, we could see across the lakes of fire and the vast smoke banks that roiled away for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. We could see flocks of troop ships soaring up and away through the smoke towards the parent ships in orbit. On the flats of the white mud far beneath us, Imperial troops ran to waiting drop ships, discarding packs and helmets and even weapons in their haste to leave. Tanks and armored carriers wallowed and puffed through the wet mud and up onto the tongue-like ramps of heavy lifters. Shells and last fire flickered across the lakes and mud as the remaining heretic forces fought on heedlessly. Lances and forks of dazzling energy bit down from the clouds, murdering the landscape. Obeying Molitor's instructions to the letter, Admiral Spatian was leveling the area. All 5 of us Inquisitors, along with Sinwolf and key Death Watchers and selected officers of the invasion force, have been given the code words to unleash this doom. Molitor had sealed our fate. Once given, Sanction extremis could not be revoked. Even if my box had been working instead of crippled by the electromagnetic burst that accompanied every orbital strike, as per the battle plans, Spatian was systematically wasting the invasion site as fast as possible, even at the cost of his own retreating ground forces. Another Ceruthi edifice, 20 kilometers away, died. Shaped in a form that suggested a nautilus shell, its opalescent curves were cracked and split by blue-hot heavy lasers. The dye-straight beams came down through the crowds from the ship so far away they were invisible, and tore through the edifice like a testamental judgment. Waves of fighter bombers swept in, sowing payloads of munitions that bloomed in rippling seas of explosions. Guided warheads, sleek like airborne sharks, whined overhead on the last stage of their first and final journey from the starship to target. The edifice ruptured and blew out. Light shock lit hemisphere. A towering column of white ash smoke rose, folding into a 15-kilometer torus-shaped cloud. The sight was stunning, shocking. Baquin and I gazed at it. A few heartbeats later, it was repeated behind us, 40 kilometers distant, as another Ceruthi edifice was annihilated. The edifice on whose smoothly curving upper surfaces we now stood was undoubtedly going to go the same way soon. Even now, I knew the coordinates were being loaded into the fleet's gunnery servitors. We ran along the lip of another curved segment, afterburners red against the black smoke. More drop ships came in, heading towards cheering, gesticulating huddles of Mirapok's infantry out in the flats. I was astounded at the selfless courage of the dropship crews. Spatian bombardment wasn't waiting for them to move in and pull out. They were risking everything to make the surface run and retrieve as many troopers as they could. "Grigor!" Baquin shouted in my ear. I turned. Down the shell form, the span of the roof behind us, Molitor and his henchmen had appeared out of the blast hole. Unsteady, they scrambled up after us. A last shot whined past me, kissing the pearly surface and leaving a burning scar. "The primer! You whoreson bastard! Give me the primer!" Molitor yelled. I gave him a full clip of bolt rounds instead. The first of the thundering tracer shots splintered the chunks out of the edifice roof. Then I hit and exploded his left thigh, his belly, and his throat. Conrad Molitor buckled and twitched as the rounds tore through him, and then he fell. His mauled body slid down the curve of the roof and disappeared, leaving a smear of blood behind it. His henchmen advanced, heedless of the shots, throwing off his hooded robe. He was naked beneath it. Tall, well-muscled, with golden cast into his skin. His face was handsome, and tiny residual horns sprouted from his skull. His eyes were blank. My prophetic dreams were made flesh. Terror seized me and turned my heart inside out. Time for a sip. Eisenhorn is one of my favorites. Chapter 26, our final chapter for the night. My favorite demon in all of Warhammer. Cherubim. The Brink. Exterminatus. I love that word. Is that not a great word? Exterminatus. Shall we continue? Do you have your MSAC? I mean, I'm not reading for children here. Don't let your kids read this book. You're going to have a lot of explaining to do. Let's get back into it. The blank-eyed man though, in truth, he was not a man, but a demon in human form, strode up the shining curve towards me. The glowing octahedron of the Ceruthi's unholy text was clasped in one of his nimble hands. I would like the primer now, please, Grigor. What are you? This is no place for introductions. He gestured about himself. Lances of annihilation blasted down into the mud flats nearby. Humor me. Very well. My name is Cherubale. Now the primer. Time is ticking away. Time will always tick away, I said. Who made you? Made me? The blank-eyed man smiled at me duplicitously. You're a demon host, a conjured thing. Tell me who made you, and who commanded you and Molitor to come after this prize, and I might give you the primer. He laughed and licked his thin lips with a glossy forked tongue. Let us both be abundantly clear about this, Grigor. You will give me the primer. Either you will hand me the primer now, or I will come over to you and take it and break every bone in your body. And, word I can't say on YouTube, that girl at your side. And break every bone in her body, too. And then drag your jiggling carcasses down into the chamber below and string you both up on the hooks and burn out your agony centers as I wait for the bombardment to flatten this place. He paused. Your choice. You've been in my dreams for a long time now. Why is that? I pressed. You're gifted, Grigor. And time is not the arrow that humans like to think it is. A second in the warp would show you that. Why, a second in the four-dimensional habitats of the Ceruthi should have proven it to you. Your dreams were just nightmares of something yet to happen. Who made you? My voice was insistent. His answer was one that I least expected, and left me all but stunned. The Holy Inquisition made me, Grigor. A brother of yours made me. Now, for the last time, give me that. The daemon host swung around suddenly as voices called out from the lower down roof. Brother Captain Sinwolf was clambering up out of the blast hole, flanked by Midas and another Death Watcher carrying the limp form of Titus Endor. Sinwolf raised his storm bolter and fired at the blank-eyed man. Cherubale reached out and caught the glowing shells, plucking them out of the air. Go home, Astartes bastard, he yelled down the sloping roof at the Sinwolf. This is nothing to do with you. The fiend came up the ridge until he was facing me. I could see tiny arcs of powder darting across his glowing skin. I could smell the stink of corruption. Eye to eye now. He held out his hand, palm up, fingernails polished like claws. Clever of you to find an untouchable to cancel me out. He looked over at Banquin. How did you manage that? Fate, like time, is not linear, Cherubale. Surely you know that. I found Banquin the same way that the dreams of you found me. He nodded. I like you, Grigor Eisenhorn. So very challenging and stimulating for a human. I wish we had leisure to discourse and break bread. But we haven't, he snapped suddenly. Give me the primer. I took out the polyhedron. His smile broadened. I dropped the artifact into the silky roof, and before it could slide away, crushed it under the heel of my boot. The demon host took a step backward, gazing down at the crunched dust. He looked up at me again with blank eyes. You are a man of singular dedication, Grigor. I would have enjoyed killing you when the day and hour came, but you're dead already. This edifice is 240 seconds away from destruction. Cherish this. He tossed me the Xenos Necrotouch, and I caught it in one gloved hand. You've won. Take that consolation to the afterlife. He started to run toward the lip of the roof, and then threw himself out into a perfect dive, arms raised. For a moment, he hung in space. Then he forked his body in, executed a precise roll, and disappeared into the lake of fire below. I pulled Bakewin to me as Seawolf, Midas, and the other Death Watch Marine approached. Endor, crumpled in the Astarte's arms, looked dead. I prayed he was, for in a moment this place would dissolve in fire. Rose Thorn from Aegis above. Well, above, for Emperor's sake. Damn this glossier crap, move! My gun cutter swung in over the edifice roof, ramp jaws open. I could see fishing at the helm through the cockpit screams, yelling at me, and Amos was inside. I watched 56 Izar die from the bridge of the St. Scythus as we were in orbit. Petals of flame, the size of continents, spread under its milky skin. Sanction extremis, exterminatus. After the deluge of fire, the virus bombs, the seething storms of tailored plagues, the nuclear atrocity. It was a cinder by the time we left. No contact with the Ceruthi race was ever made again. And the tainted, glowing light of the Necrotouch was extinguished forever. We must read the epilogue. At Pamphore. Sip of the old Amasec. At Pamphore, we rested. 40 weeks of voyage through the Immaterium had dulled our sense of victory. The fleet dispersed at Tharsium Primaris, and at last I saw the sergeant of Geras was waving a hand across a smoky, beery bar. I rented a villa out by the sound of Pamphore. Midas slept most of the day, and whiled away the night in games of regicide with Amos and Fishig. Bakewin bathed in the sun and swam in the breakers. I sat out on the salt-whipped stoop and watched over the beach like a god who had forgotten his creations. Great labor still awaited us. Reports to be made, interviews, debriefings to be attended. Lord Workin had called for a tribunal of inquiry, and the High Lords of Terror were awaiting a full account of the matter. Months of paperwork, hearings, and evidential audits lay ahead. And the identity of the force behind Molitor and his demon host remained a mystery. And though Lord Workin was as anxious as myself to find the answer, I doubted any would readily emerge. And the question might fester and stagnate unanswered in a slow, unwielding bureaucracy of the Inquisition for years. I would not allow that. As soon as I was free to engage upon another case, I would dedicate myself to finding Cherubel's master. The beloved rule of man had come close to great calamity thanks to his scheming. I would not forget the Saruthi. They were an object lesson, if any were truly needed, of how an entire advanced culture might be consumed by chaos. Seabirds looped in. The breakers crashed. The blank-eyed man still haunted my dreams. After echoes or ripples of the future, I would have to wait and see. If you've not read Eisenhorn, yes, I have a physical copy of the original omnibus. Fun story about how I got this that I shall not tell tonight, but highly recommend. For those of y'all who dropped in, thank you so much. Let me see who joined us. Hello, High Volt. Twisted Nerves. Woohoo! Yeah, I'm glad you caught me live too. Oh, you've got to read it. Got to. Feister, Macrophallus. Oh, thanks for coming. Brandon, I see you. Who else? Jake, I see you. Whoever me is. Hey, me. Or you. And Matt. Glad to see all of you. I hope y'all enjoyed this reading. Please like, comment, subscribe as always. And as a reminder, I do have memberships open. That's all about, nerdy communication skills and stuff is what we're doing there. And if you just need a general boost in your mood, that kind of stuff. I am thinking of a creative way to acknowledge my members on my channel. It will be the most edited thing I've ever done, but it's got to be good because if people do a membership on your channel, they deserve acknowledgement and they deserve it in an epic way. And what is Warhammer if nothing but epic? So, not bad for a midnight reading, right? Yeah, it's a good time. Well, I drank a Mountain Dew at 11 p.m. I'm wide awake. I think I'll go paint now.